Ethan pulled his worn-out coat tighter, trying to shield himself from the cold that seeped into his skin. He sat in a daze in his tiny 10-square-meter rental room, where the stained walls had become an all-too-familiar sight. His calloused hand gripped a debt notice tightly. The number printed on it made his heart clench. 200 million Vietnamese dong. Last month, he had been fired over a financial scandal he had no part in, yet all evidence had pointed to him. Once a promising engineer, Ethan was now jobless. In the days that followed, he had taken on any job he could find, from hauling cargo to making deliveries. But the debt only continued to mount. A sudden phone call broke him out of his spiraling thoughts. Picking up, he heard an unfamiliar voice on the other end. "Is this Ethan? We have a special invitation for you. A chance to start over." "A chance? I don't need a chance. I need money," Ethan replied, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "We know. If you join this game, your debt will disappear." Amelia wiped the sweat from her brow as the clock struck 11 p.m. The diner where she worked as a waitress had closed for the night, but a mountain of dishes still awaited her. Lately, she had been working from dawn until late at night to save money for her brother's surgery. Luke, her only brother, was born with a congenital heart defect and urgently needed an operation. The cost was in the hundreds of millions, far beyond her reach. Amelia slumped onto the floor, her eyes glazed as she stared out the window. Her life felt like an endless struggle. When she checked her phone for messages, a strange email appeared. "We know your brother needs help. Join this game, and you'll have enough money to save him." Clara stepped into her small office, where old photographs covered the walls. Each face in those pictures belonged to a patient she had once helped. But among all the photos, the one that caused Clara the most pain was of her sister, Sophia. Sophia had gone missing 5 years ago, leaving no trace behind. The case was quickly closed, with the police declaring there was no evidence to continue investigating. But Clara had never given up. That evening, she found a strange letter slipped under her door. The words were simple. "If you want to know the truth about Sophia, come to this location tomorrow. The game will begin." The next morning, Ethan, Amelia, Clara, and several others gathered at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Inside, a masked man stood in the center of the vast, empty space. His voice echoed coldly, "Welcome to the survival game. From this moment on, there is no turning back." The old warehouse was shrouded in a chilling, oppressive atmosphere. Around 20 people stood scattered inside, all wearing expressions of confusion and unease. Their eyes darted around, scrutinizing one another, each wondering what they had just stepped into. In the center of the room stood a man wearing a metallic mask, his demeanor disturbingly calm. When he spoke, his voice, processed through some kind of device, was cold and devoid of emotion. "You have been chosen to participate in the survival game, the endless maze. Each of you carries a debt, a past, or a reason that has brought you here. Today, we are offering you a chance to start over. However, the price is your very lives." A mocking laugh echoed from the back of the room. A large man in a leather jacket stepped forward, his voice filled with defiance. "We're not kids to fall for some cheap trick. Is this supposed to be a joke?" The masked man gave no reply. Instead, he raised his hand in a silent signal. Immediately, a large screen descended from the ceiling, displaying images of every individual in the room. Each screen revealed detailed personal information, names, ages, occupations, and secrets they had desperately kept hidden. Ethan froze as his own image appeared alongside the words, "Ethan Gray, unemployed engineer, 200 million Vietnamese dong in debt, facing potential lawsuits." Amelia's breath quickened as she read the file displayed about her. Amelia Carter, diner waitress, 150 million Vietnamese dong in unpaid hospital fees for her brother. Clara's hands clenched tightly as the words about her sister appeared. Clara Evans, psychologist, investigating the disappearance of her sister, Sophia Evans. The masked man continued, "We know everything about you. If you refuse to participate in this game, your secrets will be made public. However, if you win, everything will be erased. Not only that, but the winner will be granted a single wish. Anything you desire, we can make it happen." The tension in the room grew thicker. "How do we know this isn't some elaborate scam?" a middle-aged woman asked, her voice trembling. In response, the light from the screens reflected off the mask, giving it an eerie glow. The man's voice remained calm and steady. You'll know by stepping through that door. He pointed to a large door at the far end of the room, with bright red letters above it reading, Entrance to the game. Once you enter, there is no turning back. Some began to back away. A young man who appeared to be a student made a dash for the main exit. The moment his hand touched the handle, a piercing alarm sounded, and the entire room lit up. He collapsed to the floor unconscious. As I said, there is no way out. The only path is forward. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He glanced around, catching Amelia's gaze. Her eyes flickered between fear and determination as she glanced toward the door where fate awaited. Clara stood silently, her hand unconsciously gripping her sister's necklace, as though seeking strength. Fine, Ethan said loudly, breaking the silence. I'll participate. The masked man nodded as if he had anticipated this. One by one, the others made their decisions. Some were pressured into agreeing. Others, driven by curiosity, ambition, or desperation, also chose to step forward. The door creaked open, revealing a long, dark corridor leading downward. As the last person crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind them, sealing off any chance of retreat. Welcome to the endless maze, the voice echoed one final time as they stepped into the darkness. The game officially begins now. The dark passage stretched endlessly, illuminated only by faint, flickering lights along the corridor. The air was stifling, and the sound of footsteps echoed through the maze, like whispers from another world. Ethan glanced around, trying to assess the situation. Each person carried a different mood: anxiety, curiosity, fear. Amelia walked behind him, her trembling hands betraying her nerves, but her eyes held a glimmer of determination. Clara kept her distance, her sharp gaze scanning every detail as if trying to analyze the environment. At the end of the corridor, they entered a large room. The lights flicked on, revealing everything. A circular space with 4 doors leading in different directions. In the center of the room, a large screen appeared, accompanied by the familiar, mechanical voice of the masked man. Welcome to the first round, the puzzle of fate. The rules are simple, the voice continued. You have 20 minutes to choose the door that leads to safety. There are 4 doors, but only one is correct. The other 3 will lead to deadly consequences. To determine the correct door, you must solve a riddle. A question appeared on the screen. In a family of 6 members, each person has a different age. The eldest is twice the age of the youngest. The total sum of all their ages is 72. How old is the youngest member? Ethan frowned, concentrating. It's a logic puzzle, he murmured. But what happens if we get it wrong? As if reading his thoughts, the screen changed, showing surveillance footage of the rooms behind each door. One door led to a pit filled with sharp spikes. Another room was filled with toxic gas. The third, even more horrifying, housed a pack of snarling, vicious dogs. The correct door will lead to safety, the voice said. Now make your choice. Time starts now. A countdown appeared on the screen. 20:00, 1959, 1958. Amelia turned to Ethan, her voice trembling. Do you understand the puzzle? I'm not good with this kind of thing. Ethan closed his eyes, focusing. It's a math problem. The eldest is twice the youngest, and their ages add up to 72. If the youngest is X, their ages would be X, X plus 2, X plus 4. I just need more time to calculate. Clara stepped forward, her expression serious. We don't have time for mistakes. If you calculate wrong, everyone will die. Another man in the group, who seemed to be a teacher, suddenly spoke up. The answer is 6. The youngest is 6 years old, I'm sure of it. All eyes turned to him. Another person objected. How can you be so sure? What if you're wrong? Who's brave enough to open a door now? The arguments grew louder, filling the room with chaos. The clock continued ticking down. 10:00, 9:59. Ethan opened his eyes, his voice firm. No, it's not 6. The correct answer is 5. I've double-checked all the calculations. Amelia looked at him, her gaze full of trust. Which door should we pick? Ethan pointed to the third door. This one. I trust my calculations. The room fell silent as everyone turned their eyes to Ethan. Some nodded in agreement, while others hesitated. Clara stepped forward, her voice resolute. We don't have time. Either we all choose together, or we all die here. The clock showed 3 a.m. as Ethan pushed the third door open. A cold breeze swept through, revealing a tunnel with light shining at the end. It was the exit. The players ran through the door in a mix of fear and relief, leaving the room behind as the door slammed shut. Ethan glanced back at the countdown, which had stopped at 00:30. They emerged into a new chamber, but before anyone could breathe a sigh of relief, the chilling voice echoed again. Congratulations on surviving the first round, but the game has only just begun. As everyone stepped into the next room, a tense atmosphere enveloped them. The room was larger, its walls covered with massive mirrors that made the space seem infinite. In the center, a round metallic table stood, holding 20 red cards numbered from 1 to 20. On the large screen ahead, the familiar voice echoed again. Congratulations on surviving the first round, but remember, this game is not just about intelligence. It's about trust, betrayal, and survival. The next round begins now, the Allies Challenge. Rules. On the table are 20 cards. Each of you will select one. Each card bears a number that represents your role in this round. Some roles will be allies, while others will be enemies. You have 30 minutes to discuss and form a team of 5 trusted individuals to complete the mission. If you choose incorrectly, the entire group will be eliminated. The room fell into silence. Everyone eyed each other with suspicion. Ethan approached the table, picked up a card, and read it aloud. Number 8, no additional information. One by one, the others also selected their cards, their gazes still wary. Amelia chose card number 3, while Clara took card number 11. Each person held on to their card, reluctant to reveal more. A tall man with sharp features stepped forward. Introducing himself, he said, "My name is Victor. I was a captain in the military. If we want to survive, we need to be organized. I suggest forming a team of 5 based on strength and intelligence." A woman sneered in response. "Strength? Do you think this is a battlefield? This is a game of wits. We need smart people, not muscles." Ethan remained silent, observing the others. He knew anyone could be an enemy in this challenge. Meanwhile, Amelia glanced around nervously, searching for signs of safety. Clara stepped forward, her voice clear and steady. "We don't have time to argue. I think the most important thing is to identify who's hiding something. If we're not honest, we're all going to die." As the discussions began, tensions quickly escalated. A middle-aged man who appeared to be a businessman pointed an accusing finger at Victor. "I don't trust you. You claim to be a soldier, but where's the proof? How do we know you're not the enemy?" Victor smirked. "If I were the enemy, I wouldn't be standing here arguing. I could quietly sabotage the team instead of drawing attention to myself." Standing next to Ethan, Amelia whispered, "Do you think we should trust him?" Ethan shook his head. "No one is trustworthy here. We have to rely on ourselves." Eventually, under the pressure of the ticking clock, a group of 5 was formed. Ethan, Amelia, Clara, Victor, and a young woman named Rachel, who had remained reserved but frequently offered logical insights. The voice on the screen spoke again. "The group has been chosen. Are you sure about this decision? Once the challenge begins, there's no turning back." Victor nodded, speaking on behalf of the group. "We're sure." The screen turned red, and the voice announced, "Then welcome to the second mission, the Traitor in the Shadows." A large door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room. The group of 5 stepped inside, and just before the door shut behind them, the chilling voice echoed, "There is at least one traitor among you. Find them before it's too late." The room was pitch black. The confined space and oppressive atmosphere made it feel like the darkness was swallowing everyone whole. A faint click echoed, and dim lights flickered on, revealing a circular room. On the walls, 4 large clocks were counting down from 1000. The speaker's voice returned, slow and menacing. "Your challenge is simple. Among you, there is at least one traitor whose mission is to disrupt the decoding process. If you fail to identify the traitor within 1 hour, all of you will be eliminated. But if you accuse the wrong person, the consequences will be no different. Rules. On the central table are 4 boxes. Each contains a puzzle. Solve each puzzle to obtain the codes needed to unlock the exit door. Remember, the traitor will attempt to sabotage your progress. Deciding who the traitor is will be up to you. Good luck. Silence fell over the room. Rachel broke it first. We can't waste time. Let's split up and solve the puzzles immediately. Victor interrupted. Wait, if there's a traitor, splitting up is a stupid idea. We need to keep everyone in sight. Amelia hesitated. But we're on a time limit. Can we finish in time if we don't split up? Ethan nodded in agreement with Victor. We can't take the risk. The traitor could act when no one's watching. I think we should tackle the puzzles one at a time, together. The group gathered around the first box. Inside was a slip of paper with a riddle. I appear at night but not during the day. I am there but cannot be touched. What am I? Amelia thought for a moment before speaking. It's darkness, right? It only appears at night. Victor frowned. Maybe, but is there another answer? If we're wrong, we'll waste time. Clara tapped her fingers on the table, her sharp eyes scanning the group. The answer is the moon. It appears at night and can't be touched. Ethan made the call. All right, let's try that answer. He entered the code and the box opened with a beep, revealing the first code, 7482. The second box contained a more challenging riddle. I move without legs, I roar without a mouth. I leave traces but have no shape. What am I? Rachel furrowed her brows in concentration. Sound? No, that's not right. It's wind. It has to be wind, right? Victor shook his head. What about water? It moves and leaves traces behind. Ethan interjected. No, Rachel is right. Wind is the answer. It moves without a shape. Again, they tested the answer. Ethan input the code, and the box opened, revealing the second code, 5261. As the group moved to the third box, tension began to rise. Victor glanced at Rachel suspiciously. You're answering these puzzles too quickly. How do you know so much? Are you the traitor trying to lead us astray? Rachel frowned and shot back. If I were the traitor, I wouldn't have helped open the first 2 boxes. Are you trying to divert attention from yourself? Clara stepped in, her calm voice cutting through the argument. Arguing won't get us anywhere. If you suspect her, focus on actions, not words. The third box's riddle read, I am the beginning of all life, but I can also destroy everything. I have no color, yet I am powerful. What am I? Amelia hesitated. Is it fire? But fire has color. Ethan thought carefully. No, the answer is water. Water gives life, but can also destroy everything. Clara nodded in agreement. Correct. Water has no color, yet it's essential and powerful. They entered the code and the box opened, revealing the third code, 9147. The final box presented the most cryptic riddle. What gets bigger the more you take away? Rachel answered almost immediately. A hole. The more you dig, the bigger it gets. Victor smirked, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Of course, you'd answer first. Convenient, isn't it? The group exchanged uneasy glances, reluctant to decide. Ethan took a deep breath and entered the answer. The box opened and the final code was revealed, 3846. With all 4 codes entered into the door's keypad, the large door slowly creaked open, but the speaker's voice returned, cold and demanding. You have unlocked the door, but before you step through, you must identify the traitor. Fail, and your entire team will face the consequences. Time remaining, 10 o'clock. Victor pointed at Rachel. You answered too quickly. I don't trust you. Rachel bristled, her voice rising in frustration. I was trying to help the group survive. Why are you so focused on blaming me? Amelia turned to Ethan. What do you think? Who's the traitor? The group stood frozen, their eyes locked on one another, as suspicion and fear thickened the air. The room grew suffocatingly heavy. Each tick of the clock on the wall seemed to stretch longer than reality. Only 9:45 remained. and the group still hadn't reached a decision. Ethan stood tall, his stern gaze sweeping over everyone. "If we don't act, we'll all die. Use logic, not emotions." Victor pointed angrily at Rachel. "I've said it before. She's the traitor. She always answers first. She's trying to deceive us." Rachel clenched her fists, her eyes blazing with anger. "If I were the traitor, why would I help open all the boxes? I could have sabotaged any one of them and stopped our progress. You're the one sowing division in the group." Amelia tried to intervene. "Stop arguing. We need to focus on actions, not accusations. What has each person done that's suspicious?" Clara frowned, her voice calm but pointed. "We've had 4 puzzles. Who contributed the most?" Rachel seems to have the right answers every time. But that's not proof she's innocent. She could be doing it on purpose to gain our trust. Victor cut in. "And what about me? I've been trying to strategize, but all of you keep doubting me." Amelia turned to Clara. "And you? You've been quiet this whole time. Maybe you're staying silent to avoid suspicion." Clara responded coldly, her tone sharp. "I don't speak unless necessary, but I've observed enough to see that Victor is deflecting attention onto others instead of proving his own innocence." Ethan raised his hand. "Enough. Stop blaming each other. We need to decide now." With only 5 minutes remaining, Ethan looked at everyone, then took a deep breath. "I propose a vote. Each of us will name the person we suspect most. We'll go with the majority's decision." Reluctantly, the group agreed. One by one, they cast their votes. Victor voted for Rachel. Rachel voted for Victor. Clara voted for Victor. Amelia voted for Rachel. Ethan was the last to decide. Ethan closed his eyes, thinking deeply. Finally, he opened them and spoke. "I vote for Victor." Victor was stunned. "You suspect me? This is ridiculous. I've been trying to protect everyone." Rachel gave a small, tense smile. "If you have nothing to hide, then let the truth speak for itself." The screen above lit up, and the cold voice echoed again. "The group has chosen Victor as the traitor. The final decision has been made." Victor was dragged to a corner of the room where a small door appeared. A blinding light shone on him, and he screamed, "You'll regret this. I'm not the traitor. It's her, Rachel. She's the..." The door slammed shut, cutting off Victor's cries. The group fell silent, unable to look at one another. The voice returned. "Congratulations. You have completed the challenge with the wrong result." The room shook and red lights flashed everywhere. The voice, colder than ever, continued. "Victor was not the traitor. The traitor is still among you." Rachel stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with triumph. "So, you all chose wrong. I'm sorry. Or maybe I'm not." Ethan froze while Amelia took a shaky step back, murmuring, "No, it can't be. She tricked us." Rachel smirked. "I did what I had to do to survive. You thought this game was about trust? Wrong. This is a game of life and death, and I don't have time for sentiment." The screen displayed a new message. "The next round will begin in 5 minutes. Remaining players, prepare yourselves." Amelia trembled as she turned to Ethan. "What do we do now? We can't trust anyone anymore." Clara whispered, her voice filled with quiet fury. "I don't care if Rachel is the traitor or not. She's going to pay for this." Ethan said nothing, his gaze fixed on Rachel. For the first time since the game began, the fear in his eyes gave way to a cold determination. "If we want to survive, we'll have to play by their rules." The flashing red lights gradually dimmed, leaving the room shrouded in ominous darkness. Footsteps echoed as the door ahead slowly opened, revealing a long hallway. The familiar, emotionless voice resonated once more. "Congratulations on completing the first challenge, albeit with a grave mistake. The next round will test your unity, or your inevitable collapse. Proceed to the next room to begin the game." Ethan, Clara, Rachel, and Amelia walked silently through the door. No one spoke. The weight of their failure, eliminating Victor, an innocent man, hung over them like a storm cloud. The new room. This room was much larger, with a large table at its center. On the table were 5 chairs, but only 4 people remained. A large screen on the wall displayed the words, Team's choice. The voice spoke again. Welcome to round 2. The rules are simple. You will face 3 consecutive challenges. To succeed, you must work together. However, only 3 members of the group can participate in each challenge. 1 person must sit out. Whoever is excluded from a challenge will not have another chance to return. Choose wisely, Amelia whispered, her voice trembling. Does that mean if we choose the wrong person to sit out, they're done for good? Rachel smirked. Exactly. And I think we all know who should stay behind. Clara cut her off, her voice icy. Rachel, if you keep spreading distrust and division, then the one who should sit out is you. Ethan stepped in, trying to stay calm. Stop arguing. This game is designed to break us apart. If we keep doubting each other, none of us will make it out alive. The first challenge. The screen displayed the title of the first challenge, Lies and Truth. The rules were explained. The group must choose 3 participants. A series of questions will be asked to each participant. 2 people must tell the truth, while 1 must lie. The remaining members must identify the liar. If they choose incorrectly, the entire group will face punishment. Rachel shrugged. Easy, I'll go. Who else wants to volunteer? Clara stepped forward, her gaze steady. I'll go too. Ethan and Amelia, you decide. Ethan nodded. I'll join. Amelia, you stay out this time. We need to keep you safe for the next challenge. Reluctantly, Amelia agreed and sat at the spectator chair beside the table. The challenge begins. The 3 participants entered a small area with chairs equipped with sensors. Each was given a small device to answer questions. The first question was asked, do you believe everyone in the group is innocent? Rachel, yes. Clara, no. Ethan, yes. Amelia observed from her seat, narrowing her eyes as she tried to read their expressions. The next question followed. If you had to choose, who would you eliminate to save yourself? Rachel, I'd eliminate Clara. Clara, I'd eliminate Rachel. Ethan, I wouldn't eliminate anyone. Amelia's anxiety grew. She couldn't tell who was lying and who was truthful. When the questions concluded, the group was instructed to determine the liar. Rachel smirked. Obviously, it's Clara. She's been trying to divide us from the start. Clara shot back. If I were the liar, I wouldn't have called her out. Rachel is clearly the one trying to deceive us. Ethan stood silent, his expression conflicted. I don't know. Both of you seem suspicious. Amelia called out from her seat. Ethan, you have to decide. Who's the liar? Ethan looked at Rachel, then Clara, and finally closed his eyes. Pointing at Rachel, he said, I choose you. Rachel laughed coldly, her eyes glinting with defiance. Interesting choice. The result. The screen displayed the words, correct, Rachel is the liar. Rachel shrugged as she exited the challenge area, but her eyes burned with anger. You may have guessed right this time, but it won't be so easy next time. Amelia let out a sigh of relief, but Clara and Ethan remained tense. They knew the game was far from over. Preparing for the next challenge. A door on the right opened, leading to another room. The voice returned. The next challenge will test your courage and willingness to sacrifice. Choose 3 participants. This time the decision will not only affect individuals but the group as a whole. The group stood at the threshold, tension thick in the air. They knew that any decision they made could lead to fatal consequences. The door creaked open, leading the group into a spacious room with a towering ceiling. White lights flickered above, casting an eerie dim glow over the space. Ahead stood a long table with 3 chairs and 3 metal boxes engraved with the words, Your choice. The cold voice echoed again, more menacing this time. Welcome to the final challenge of this round. The decisions you make today will determine who continues and who is eliminated. However, this time, it's not only your choices that matter but also sacrifices you can't take back. Ethan clenched his fists, suspicion clouding his eyes. Sacrifices we can't take back? What does that mean? The voice replied, devoid of emotion. Each of you will be required to give up something very important to protect the others. If you fail to decide, the game will choose for you. Clara glanced at the boxes, worry etched across her face. Sacrifice? What are we supposed to give up? The voice responded again, as if relishing their unease. Only 3 of you can participate in this challenge. 1 person must stay behind. The other 3 will face a choice between what matters most: life, honesty, or a deeply buried secret. A wrong choice will result in severe consequences for everyone. The first decision. The group approached the table, where the 3 locked metal boxes rested. Each box bore a small inscription hinting at the choice it represented. Box 1, the choice of life. Box 2, the choice of honesty. Box 3, the choice of secrets. Amelia studied the boxes, hesitation clear in her expression. This could be a trap. We need to make the right choice, don't we? Ethan exhaled sharply. We don't have many options. One of us will have to sacrifice something very important. Rachel smirked, her voice laced with sarcasm. You think I'd choose life? I'm ready to sacrifice anything to stay alive. Clara's tone turned firm. Choosing life isn't always easy. You can't just pick it carelessly. Amelia sat down, her hands trembling as she stared at the boxes. I'll sacrifice a secret. I have nothing to hide anymore. If we want to survive, we all need to be honest. The next choices. Clara shook her head, her eyes resolute. I'll choose honesty. If I can't live truthfully, what's the point of living at all? Ethan turned to Rachel, his gaze icy. Then I'll choose life. What about you, Rachel? Rachel's lips curled into a faint, mocking smile. Choosing life is easy, but I'd rather keep my secrets. What's life without something to protect? Amelia looked at her, startled. You'd really choose secrets? Aren't you afraid of the consequences? Rachel's laugh was dry and humorless. We're in a game of life and death. Nothing matters except survival. The voice spoke again, slow and deliberate, amplifying the tension in the room. You've made your choices. Now decide who will participate in the challenge and who will stay behind. The 4 exchanged tense glances, their gazes flitting back and forth like sparks in a growing fire. Ethan spoke first, his tone resolute. Amelia, you'll stay out. The 3 of us will take on this challenge. Amelia looked at him in shock, her face filled with concern. Ethan, are you sure about this? Ethan nodded firmly. We've come this far. We can't stop now. You have to stay behind so we can have a chance. Left with no choice, Amelia silently sat in the corner, her expression a mix of worry and fear. The trial begins. The 3 boxes on the table began to glow faintly as the voice resumed. For each choice, there will be a question. Answer correctly, and you will keep what you chose to protect. Answer incorrectly, and you will lose it. The first question rang out. Are you willing to sacrifice your life to save someone else? Ethan. Yes. Clara. Yes. Rachel. No. The screen flickered. Incorrect. Rachel has chosen wrong. She will lose her secret. Rachel remained motionless, but her eyes darkened as she stared at the screen. She seemed prepared for whatever was to come. The outcome. The door behind them creaked open, but there was no sound of celebration, no sign of victory. Only an oppressive silence filled the room, heavy with unspoken loss. The chairs, still present, seemed to serve as symbols of what had been sacrificed. The voice echoed once more. The next round will begin as soon as you're ready. The group exchanged wary glances, knowing the worst was yet to come. As the doors behind them shut, the room descended into a heavy silence, broken only by the echo of their footsteps in the darkness. A large screen on the wall flickered to life once more, displaying a brief but grave message. The final challenge has arrived. Only one person can survive. Amelia looked up at the screen, her breathing quickening. She had been excluded from the previous trial, but now every decision lay in the hands of those who remained. Ethan, Clara, and Rachel stood close together, their eyes locking with confusion and dread. The situation was clear. Only one of them could survive. They had come this far, but the final decision would be the hardest yet. The cold voice returned, as merciless as a death sentence. You have endured many challenges, but only one of you can move forward. Prove your worth. The final door will open only when you understand the true value of sacrifice, courage, and humanity. The final choice. On the table appeared a single box, distinct from all the others before it. This box bore no inscriptions, only a large button at its center. The screen continued. Only one person may press the button. The one who does will decide. Leave alone, or let everyone continue together. Ethan stared at the box, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He knew that if he pressed the button, only one person would survive. Yet if no one acted, they might never escape this place. Clara stepped forward, her expression resolute. Don't do it, Ethan. If you press that button, only you will survive. We've been through too much to throw it all away now. Don't make a choice that condemns us. Rachel let out a soft laugh, her voice devoid of warmth. She's right. But if you don't press it, we'll all face something unimaginable. Whatever you decide will determine who lives and who dies. Ethan remained silent, his hand hovering over the box. He could feel the tension in every breath. For a moment he thought he couldn't go on, that no decision would ever feel right. The test of courage. The screen lit up again, but this time the voice carried a tone that was less icy, almost testing their patience and bravery. What is most important to you? If you cannot decide, the game will choose for you. Sacrifice is the greatest value in this game. Are you willing to sacrifice yourself to save others? Clara turned to Ethan, her gaze softening, though her voice remained steady. Ethan, I know you're a good person. Let all of us leave. Don't think of yourself. If you press that button, we'll never truly live as humans again. Ethan looked back at Clara and Rachel, then slowly withdrew his hand from the box. His eyes reflected both hesitation and determination as he spoke. You're right. We can't let this game dictate who we are. My sacrifice might save us all, but I won't press the button. If there's even a chance for all of us, we have to fight to live as real people. The final outcome. The voice echoed once more, but this time without the harshness of before. In fact, it carried an almost strange sense of empathy. Congratulations! You have passed the final challenge. This survival game was never just about finding the strongest, but about testing the deeper values within each of you. The large door before them creaked open, revealing a strange light that seemed to signal their release. Amelia, who had been safe all along, stepped forward to join them. Together, they could feel the sense of liberation drawing near. The end or a new beginning. They stepped through the door and into the world beyond. Yet none of them knew if what awaited them was truly a new beginning or simply the start of another, more harrowing trial. Before the door closed, one final message appeared on the screen. The survival game never ends. When you believe you've won, that is when you face your greatest challenge. The sky outside the door was bright, but the light seemed unable to dispel the feeling of anxiety and unease in each of their hearts. As they stepped out of the survival game zone, the place where they had been imprisoned and tested, they now faced a different world, one they thought they had long forgotten. Amelia was the first to speak as they stepped outside. Are we really out? No more doors, no more challenges? Did we win? Ethan didn't respond immediately. He looked around, trying to make sense of whether this was truly the world they had left behind when they entered the game. Everything seemed too peaceful, too easy. He couldn't believe that the game had ended without any unexpected twists. Clara looked up at the sky, where sunlight bathed the ground, a confirmation of the freedom they had just achieved. But she couldn't shake the feeling of unease in her chest. Why did everything feel so simple? Rachel stood nearby, her eyes retaining the familiar coldness. She didn't seem to care much about the light or the free air outside. She only knew one thing. This can't be real. If it was all over, we wouldn't be able to step out this easily. There's definitely something hidden. The truth behind the outside world. Suddenly, the large screen in front of them flickered to life, emitting a harsh, jarring sound. The familiar voice echoed again, but this time it carried a tone of contempt. Congratulations on making it outside. But the truth is, you are not living in the real world. You have entered a simulation where everything is just a part of the survival game. Ethan stood frozen, unable to believe what he had just heard. A simulation? This can't be true. We fought, we sacrificed everything. How can this be another game? The cold voice continued. The survival game never ends. You are merely a part of a bigger plan. Everything, from the sacrifices you made to the conflicts among you, was calculated from the start. The ultimate goal was to see if humanity could hold on to its values when faced with life and death. Clara clenched her fists, her gaze darkening. So we were just pawns in a bigger game? Everything was just a calculation? There's no freedom? The screen continued. Not everything is calculation. You can still hold on to your values, or you will be forced to choose again. Now you may move forward or return to seek answers about your past. The ghosts of the past. Amelia, still reeling from the strange revelation that they weren't in the real world, tried to maintain her composure. Can we really go back? Why would we return to such a deadly game? Rachel responded calmly. Because if we don't go back, everything that happened will forever remain a mystery. The ghosts of the past will never leave us. Ethan looked at the screen, his eyes burning with resolve. We've sacrificed too much to get here. No matter what the game is, I won't let these secrets exist. If we have to face the past, then we will face it. Clara and Rachel were silent, but deep in their eyes, each carried their own fear. They didn't know what this world was, but they knew that to find the truth, they would have to confront every challenge ahead. Returning to the game. After deciding to return, the door before them opened, and they stepped into a different space. A room with nothing but simple chairs. The voice echoed once more. Congratulations on deciding to return. However, this doesn't mean you will easily escape this place. The screen lit up with bold letters. To go outside once again, you must face your own past. Each of you will confront the decision you made before. The past cannot be hidden. Ethan, Clara, Rachel, and Amelia had no other choice. They understood that to escape this game, they would have to confront the ghosts of their past that they had always tried to bury. Secrets would be revealed, and they had to be prepared for the most terrifying truths. When the screen went dark and the room returned to its eerie silence, the four of them stood motionless, not a word spoken. A chilling cold enveloped them, and the air felt thick, heavy, and suffocating. Each of them was wondering the same question: what is my past? Ethan looked around the empty room, feeling as though he had been pushed into a game with no escape. What were the ghosts the screen had mentioned? Could he face them without breaking? Rachel, still as cold as ever, was the first to break the silence. We have no other choice. They want us to face the mistakes, the decisions we made in the past. But if we do that, will we be able to hold on to ourselves? Clara, standing at the back, her eyes distant, sighed. No one can change the past, but we can change the future. If that's what they want, we'll do it. Amelia, always the most resolute of the group, looked at the others, her gaze resting on Ethan. We can't let the ghosts of the past control us. They want us to fall, but we won't. We've overcome too many challenges to stop here. The ghosts in the mirror. No sooner had Amelia spoken than a large mirror appeared at the far end of the room. The door opened and the four of them approached, an odd feeling in their hearts, as if this mirror was hiding some secret. As they stood before the mirror, an engraved message appeared on its surface. Face yourself. Your decisions are what you have become. You cannot run. Ethan swallowed hard, feeling as if something was slowly pulling him into the mirror. The reflection in the glass wasn't his own, as he was now, but a different man, an image he had never seen before, though it felt strangely familiar. The image in the mirror began to fade, then sharpened again, and a man appeared. It was him, but not the current version. This was a version of Ethan when he was someone completely different, with dark eyes and a serious expression. And Ethan he didn't remember. Fear overwhelmed him, but Ethan couldn't tear his eyes away from the image. The screen lit up once more, like a reminder. Face your mistakes. Everything you do has consequences. Ethan could no longer bear it. He stepped closer to the mirror, his hand reaching out to touch the glass. At that moment, the reflection changed. Memories began to surface. Times he had hurt others, the wrong decisions he had made, the people he had left behind. Each scene was a scar in his soul, an accusation he could not deny. Confronting themselves, Clara, Rachel, and Amelia each approached the mirror in turn, each seeing their own ghosts. Clara looked into the mirror and saw a version of herself, cold, ruthless, willing to sacrifice anyone to achieve her goals. She saw the friends who had abandoned her, the relationships destroyed by her own selfishness. Rachel faced a different version of herself, someone not only cold but also ambitious, willing to do anything to win. She saw the loved ones she had left behind due to her wrong decisions. Amelia looked into the mirror and saw herself, alone in a crowd, never daring to face her true feelings. She realized that her avoidance, her unwillingness to face herself, had created invisible distances between her and everyone else. Each of them had to face the decisions, the mistakes from their past that they had tried so hard to forget. But now those ghosts couldn't be hidden. They forced them to confront and look at what they truly were: liberation or destruction. As they looked at each other, they realized this wasn't just a survival game. This was a struggle to find themselves. To step through the ghosts of the past and free themselves, they needed to admit their mistakes and find a way to fix them. Ethan spoke first. "We can't change the past, but we can learn from it. We can be better people if we truly want to." Clara nodded, her eyes determined. "Exactly, there's no other way. We must face our mistakes and keep moving forward." Rachel looked at the mirror, then back at the three friends. She said nothing, but deep inside, she had undergone a great change. The ghosts of the past would no longer haunt her. Amelia smiled and took the hands of the other three. "We can do this. Together." As they turned away, the door in the room opened. The game was not over yet, but an important step had been taken. They had faced themselves, and they would not let the past control their future. The door opened, but it wasn't the freedom or the light of hope they had expected. A pitch-black space enveloped them, and the only sound was the soft echo of their footsteps in the vast emptiness. They stepped into a long corridor with no sign of an exit. The weak, dim light from flickering bulbs cast eerie shadows on the cold concrete walls. It felt as though they had wandered into another world, a place where there was no distinction between past and present, life and death. Ethan tightened his grip on Amelia's hand, his face full of concern. "Where are we going? Why here?" Amelia didn't respond immediately but stared ahead. The suffocating feeling didn't come just from the darkness, but from the sudden sense of danger that seemed to permeate the air. Everything in the corridor exuded an unsettling unease, as though they were being watched. Clara moved forward, her eyes sharp. "Doesn't anyone else feel it? This is like we're being hunted." Rachel nodded, her hand clutching her weapon, ready for anything. "Be careful. This isn't a simple game anymore. Someone is hiding in the shadows." At that moment, a voice echoed from afar, reverberating in the silence, its origin impossible to pinpoint. "Welcome back. As I've said, the game has never ended." Each of them turned to look at one another, anxiety clear in their eyes. None of them dared to be sure if the voice belonged to someone real or if it was just an illusion. But one thing was clear: it was a person, someone who controlled this entire game. The voice continued, as if relishing in their confusion. "Did you think you escaped? Did you think that simply confronting the past could change everything? Don't forget, survival games have many stages, and in this stage, you'll face the real enemy. The enemy you cannot see, but you can feel. The race against time. They couldn't wait any longer. They had to move forward to find an exit. Every second was precious, and no one knew when the enemy lurking in the shadows would strike. It felt like they were racing against time, where each step could lead them into mortal danger. Ethan stood up, pulling Clara and Rachel forward, but they were stopped by a large iron door that suddenly appeared in front of them. This door wasn't like the others. It didn't just block their path. It carried a strange code, one that seemed to touch each of their minds. "We have to solve this door," Ethan said, his voice serious. Rachel turned to examine the door carefully. "But what's this code? I can't decipher it." Amelia stepped closer, studying the carvings on the door. The markings weren't random. They resembled an ancient code she had seen before, in a haunting dream. "We've faced this challenge before," Amelia whispered, a cold chill overtaking her mind. "These symbols, they're connected to memories I buried deep. This is part of my past." Clara stepped forward, weapon in hand, her eyes never leaving the door. So what do we need to do? Amelia didn't answer right away. She stood still, lost in thought. Then suddenly she turned and looked into each of their eyes. We have to remember, things may be forgotten, but they are never truly lost. We need to decode our own memories to open this door. Buried memories. At the same time, each of them began recalling strange details from their past, memories they had desperately tried to forget. Amelia remembered a dark night where she witnessed a mysterious meeting, a promise never fulfilled. Clara recalled a time when she faced betrayal, unable to escape the nightmare from those she had once called friends. Rachel remembered a wrong decision she had made and the price she had paid for her ambition. Each memory was a piece of a larger story, a story they couldn't avoid, no matter how hard they tried. They couldn't let these memories control them any longer. But to move forward, they had to decipher this code, the code of their past. Ethan was the first to speak. We can't let these memories rule our lives. Anyway, we have to solve this door and move on. A soft sound echoed. The door began to open, piece by piece. Each fragment of memory was unlocked, and now they had to face the next challenge. The enemy in the shadows. The door fully opened, and they stepped into a new space. A dark room full of shadowy, indistinct figures. Suddenly, from the darkness, a figure emerged, slowly becoming clearer. A man dressed in black stood there, staring at them with cold eyes. Finally, you've arrived. But do you think simply overcoming your memories can help you escape me? The voice of the man echoed, though it seemed to come from a distant place. Ethan stared at the man, knowing that this was the moment to face the true enemy. The one who had been hiding in the shadows all along. The dark room gradually lit up as the weak lights began to flicker. The four of them stood facing the enemy in the shadows, the man in black still standing silently, as if he had been waiting for them for a long time. He wore a mask that concealed all emotions and intentions. Ethan gripped Amelia's hand tightly, his gaze filled with determination. There was no time for fear. They had to face whatever was coming. The enemy before them was not an ordinary person, but a part of the system they were trapped in, and perhaps he was the one who had orchestrated everything. The enemy, still standing there, stared at them with an unblinking gaze. After a while, he spoke, his voice echoing as if it passed through all the walls of the room. You finally arrived. Do you think you've overcome all the challenges? Not yet. This game has only just begun. Each word he spoke seemed to penetrate every corner of their minds. Clara couldn't hold back any longer. She stepped forward, her eyes filled with frustration. Who are you? Why are you doing all this? What is this game? Clara shouted. The enemy chuckled softly, but the laughter was cold and chilling. You're not clever enough to understand, Clara. It all starts with you, from the decisions you made. You are the pieces in a game you cannot escape. You've lived in the shadows for too long, and now you'll face the truth. Ethan could no longer be patient. He stepped forward, his eyes burning with fury. We've faced the challenges, but to know who you are and why you're doing this, we need to know the truth. If you won't tell us, we'll never stop. The enemy remained silent for a long time before finally removing his mask. As the mask fell, everyone was stunned, for the person before them was not a stranger. It was someone they had met before. The horrifying truth. It was none other than Richard, someone they had trusted, one of the participants in the previous survival game. Richard, with sharp eyes and a smile full of hidden meaning, stood before them as if everything that had happened was nothing more than a joke. Richard? It can't be, Rachel exclaimed, her voice choked with disbelief. You're the one behind all of this? Why are you doing this? Richard smiled, but it wasn't the smile of a friend. It was the smile of someone who knew the wounds in each of their souls. Oh, have you forgotten? You were the perfect pieces in this game. No one was an exception. You, just like me, had to face decisions with no turning back. This game is not about life or death. It's about understanding. Understanding that in the darkness, you are who you truly are. Ethan couldn't believe his ears. What do you mean? What are you saying when you call us pieces in this game? Richard moved closer and looked directly into each of their eyes. You made the choices. You decided to let me be the one behind all of this. Every challenge, every decision you've gone through is a wound within you that I've exploited to create this game. Clara couldn't believe what she was hearing. What are you talking about? We didn't do anything wrong. Richard chuckled coldly. Mistakes are something you can't avoid. Every choice you made, every decision you took, has created this setup. You are mere pawns in a game you didn't even realize you were playing. Revealing the hidden, Ethan, losing all patience, stepped forward. So what is the purpose of this game? What do we have to do to escape? Richard sighed, his cold eyes fixed on the four of them. This game isn't about escaping. You can't escape. You can't change the past. You have to learn to live with what you've done. Suddenly, Richard pointed to the wall opposite, where images from the past appeared. Each image was a moment the group had experienced, but this time they were distorted. These images weren't actual events, but variations, twisted memories, wrong decisions each of them had made. Every piece showed regret, pain, and betrayal. What you see here is the past you've denied. You can change your decisions in the future, but you can't change what has happened, Richard said, his voice mocking. The final choice. Each person in the group stared at the images on the wall. These weren't simple memories. They were a tribute to their mistakes, decisions they couldn't shake off. Ethan felt a storm brewing inside him. He realized that they might never escape their past, but the only thing they could do now was face it. We can't change the past, but we can start again from now, Ethan said, his voice resolute. After all, this game isn't about running away. It's about facing it and moving forward. Amelia, Clara, and Rachel all nodded. They had learned an important lesson, that only by confronting the past could they open the door to the future. Richard looked at them challengingly before turning away, saying nothing more. The door before them opened, and they knew that no matter what challenge lay ahead, they would never stop fighting. After Richard left, the room immediately fell into a tense silence. The images from their past still appeared on the wall, serving as a reminder of the mistakes they couldn't undo. The group stood still, each lost in their own thoughts. Ethan was the first to break the silence. He walked up to the wall and reached out to touch one of the images, a moment he had never considered before. He had chosen to abandon his close friend in the past, and that picture felt like a deep wound in his heart. The guilt rose within him, but he knew that if they kept dwelling on the past, they would never move forward. We can't let these things control us anymore, Ethan said, his voice deep and full of resolve. We have to keep moving forward. We can't go back. Amelia, standing behind him, had also seen her own moment. She remembered the painful decision she once made, the betrayal of her old friends. It felt like a wave crashing against her mind, but she couldn't let it overwhelm her anymore. If they were going to escape this game, they needed to master their own minds. Clara quietly turned away, her gaze sorrowful but determined. Every image on the wall was a vivid memory of wrong decisions, but it was also a reminder that they had learned valuable lessons from them. The past is a lesson, not a shadow, she whispered, as if reminding herself. Rachel, who had always maintained a calm demeanor, couldn't avoid feeling unsettled now. The images not only made her recall her mistakes, but they also made her realize that those decisions couldn't be undone. But one thing she understood clearly: if they couldn't change the past, they at least had the power to shape the future. We're not victims in this game, Rachel said, not looking back at the others. We're the players, and it's time we take control of the game ourselves. Discovering the new rules. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the door, breaking the tense atmosphere. You've made your decision, but where will this decision lead you? The group turned around and realized that the iron door they had previously opened had closed, and a large screen appeared on the wall. It displayed the following message: there is only one way out, but not everyone can walk it. One of you will have to sacrifice. If you refuse, there will be no escape. The words shook everyone. They knew that every challenge in this game was designed to push them to the edge of life and death, but they had never faced a choice as brutal as this one. What the hell is this? Ethan shouted. We can't make one person sacrifice. Clara stepped forward, her eyes cold yet resolute. This is the choice we have to face. If we want to get out, we have to make a decision. But I can't do it. None of us should die for a wrong decision again. Amelia looked at Rachel, then turned to Ethan and Clara. She understood that they didn't have much time left. They needed to make a choice, but this was an agonizing one. We won't let one person sacrifice. We need to find a way to change this. The theory of survival games. The group turned back to the screen, each of them wondering if there was any way to change this outcome. But then Rachel remembered a theory she had heard in a conversation before. Survival games weren't about winning in the usual sense. They were about trade-offs and painful decisions. "We can't change the rules of this game," Rachel said, her voice soft but clear. "But we can change how we face it." Amelia's eyes lit up. "We don't have to choose who will sacrifice. We need to find a way for all of us to survive." "But how?" Clara asked, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Rachel took a deep breath and explained. "Maybe if we face this challenge together and don't leave anyone behind, we can find a way to change the game from within. This game isn't just about life and death, it's about unity." Ethan nodded. "If we work together, if we keep faith in each other, maybe we can find a way for all four of us to escape." The final challenge. Suddenly, the screen on the wall changed and a new message appeared. "Your answer has been recorded, but now the final challenge begins." A large door opened, leading them into a vast room filled with countless traps and snares. In the center of the room, a large clock was ticking down the seconds. "How much time do we have left?" Amelia asked, looking at the clock. "Only 1 hour," Richard's voice answered from somewhere in the darkness. "1 hour to prove you deserve to survive. Overcome this challenge." The final battle. The group had no choice but to enter the room. They not only had to face physical traps, but also a psychological test. Unity would be the key to overcoming every difficulty. As the clock began to count down, they knew they had to work together more than ever. No one could do this alone, and in the end, they had to realize that survival games weren't just about escaping the room. They were about overcoming themselves. When the door to the room closed behind them, the atmosphere grew heavier than ever before. The four of them stood still, their eyes locked on the countdown clock projected on the large screen in front of them. Only 1 hour remained, and they knew that every passing second was a diminishing opportunity to find a way out of this game. The dim light from the faint ceiling lamps did little to dispel the gloom that engulfed the room. Before them was a vast space, with traps hidden beneath the old wooden floorboards. Broken shards of mirrors were scattered across the room, and the light reflected off the cracks in the walls, casting eerie shadows. Mechanical traps, pull cords, and concealed mechanisms under the ground had transformed the space into a deadly maze. But what weighed the group down the most wasn't the physical danger. It was the waiting and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. "We can't do this alone," Rachel said, her gaze fixed on the shards of broken glass, as if they were reflecting the deep thoughts within her mind. Ethan nodded, not surprised by Rachel's comment. He understood it well. "We have to coordinate, not just in each step, but in our thinking. Don't let the shards of glass reflect our fears, because that might be what makes us fall." Clara and Amelia remained silent, focusing on their surroundings. Every tiny sound in the room seemed to echo, and each of their movements was calculated with great care. Even the sound of glass crunching underfoot added to the tension in the air. "We need to figure out how to control this room," Clara spoke, but there was less certainty in her voice than before. Her eyes lingered on the countdown clock. Time was running out quickly. "An hour left. We can't waste any more time." Mental test. Suddenly, the large screen in front of them lit up, and a voice echoed from the speakers in the ceiling. "The next challenge is not physical, it's mental." Before they could react, a section of the floor opened up, revealing a passage leading downward. The walls of the passage were covered in cracks, as if it had existed for a very long time. The voice continued, "You must face your own fears. What you see in this passage is the truth, the memories you've tried to hide. You will have to choose, step in and confront them, or turn back and continue playing the game of fate." The group stood still, silent. Each of them had memories they had tried to bury in their minds. Fears, mistakes, decisions that caused them pain, all things they never wanted to confront again. "This is a battle of the mind," Rachel said calmly, though there was a visible anxiety in her eyes that no one could hide. "We can overcome this challenge if we don't let fear control us. We all have our own fears. Let's face them." Facing the fear. Amelia was the first to step into the passage. She didn't look back at the group, even though her mind was filled with confusion. In the darkness, everything seemed blurred. Each step felt heavier, as if she were walking into another world. The surroundings began to change. The first strange image that appeared was that of an old friend, someone she had betrayed in the past. She couldn't bear to see that image, but she had to face it. She remembered the decision that had caused that person pain, and now she had to make a new choice: regret or move forward. Her breath echoed in the silence. Amelia gently closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, the image of her friend was gone. She continued walking, feeling as if she had been freed from a part of her past. Unity. Clara followed next. She wasn't afraid, but as the passage opened, images of lost loved ones appeared before her. Pain, regret, wrong choices she couldn't undo. It felt like the world was collapsing around her, but Clara didn't stop. She knew that only by facing the past could she escape this place. She walked on, and gradually the images faded, making way for a new path. Ethan and Rachel entered together. They faced their own fears, memories of loss, of wrong choices, and mistakes they couldn't forgive themselves for. But with each step, they realized that fear couldn't win if they fought together. The final choice. When they had all passed through the passage, they gathered in the center of the room. On the screen, words began to appear, asking them to make a final decision. Only one can leave. Your decision will determine your fate. These words hit each of them like a punch to the stomach. They looked at each other, their faces weary and filled with anxiety. They had overcome the challenge, but now they had to face this choice. But this time they knew that unity wouldn't just help them overcome the challenges, it would be the key to surviving this painful decision. The group stood silently before the large screen. The words that appeared were haunting. Only one can leave. Your decision will determine your fate. These words were a brutal call, severing any hope of escaping the game without loss. The air in the room felt suffocating, with only the sound of their labored breaths echoing in the dark space. Rachel stood closest to the screen, her eyes fixed on the text. She felt as though she were being pulled into a whirlpool with no way out. Her heart was heavy, and for a moment, she wondered if there was anything they could do to free each other without anyone having to make the ultimate sacrifice. Amelia was the first to speak. "We've been through so many challenges together, faced every fear. But this," she swallowed hard, trying not to choke on her words. "This is too cruel. How can we decide who must die?" "We can't do that," Clara replied firmly. "None of us can decide that one of us must sacrifice. They want to test our courage, but we have to stay in control. We won't let this game defeat us." Ethan, though silent, spoke volumes with his gaze. While a wave of turmoil churned inside him, he knew they could not let panic take over. They needed to stay strong, to find a way for everyone to survive. The paths ahead. A small noise echoed, and the wall ahead began to shift. A metal door slowly opened, revealing another room, dark and foggy. On the wall, new words appeared. "To escape, you must pass 3 final tests. Each test will measure your bond. If you succeed, all will be free. If not, none will escape." The group stood still, their eyes shifting from the screen to the open door. It was their last chance to escape, but it also carried an unimaginable risk. They knew each test could lead to life or death. Clara was the first to move toward the door, seemingly resolute. "We have no other choice, let's go," she said, and the group followed, none of them hesitating. The first test, the loyalty test. Upon stepping through the door, a blinding light shone from a table placed in the center of the room. On the table was a box, and surrounding it were 4 chairs, each tied with a thick rope. The large screen above them displayed a new message. "Only one may leave this room. You must choose. Who will leave?" The group stopped, their eyes scanning each other before shifting to the box. Inside, they could not see clearly, but there was a strange, unsettling feeling that made them hesitate. This was the first test of the 3, but also the greatest test: loyalty. Rachel spoke, her voice trembling. What are we supposed to do? We can't just choose one person to leave. We have no choice but to decide, Ethan said, his voice weary. But I can't do it. I can't choose anyone. Amelia stared at the box, then turned to face the others. Maybe, if we don't choose anyone, we'll fail. But is this exactly what they want us to do? The psychology of the game. In the silence that followed, they all fell into heavy stillness. Their eyes met. Old emotions and memories seemed to resurface. Each person was battling with themselves. Conversations and memories of the past, of betrayal, loss, and mistakes they couldn't fix. Everything intertwined, making each person's psyche more strained than ever before. This is their game, Clara whispered, almost as if speaking to herself. If we don't act, they'll win. We can't let them control us. But if this decision is to test our loyalty, we have to make it ourselves. Amelia looked around, then turned back with a determined expression. We won't sacrifice anyone. No one has to die. With her last words, a sound came from the box, as if a mechanism had been activated. A lock clicked open, and inside the box was a ticket, unclear in nature, but clearly something that could be the key to their escape. Solving the test. Everyone stared at the ticket and realized they had passed the first test. They didn't choose anyone, and that proved their unity. The ticket was a symbol, not of sacrifice, but of perseverance. On the screen, new words appeared. We have seen your bond, but there are 2 more tests. Do you have the strength to overcome them? The dim light from the hanging lamps illuminated the area where the group had just entered. After the first test, they had overcome the painful choice about loyalty. However, as soon as the screen displayed the message, 2 more tests remain, the anxiety returned, like a dark wave invading each person's mind. They knew this game would not be easy, and everyone understood that the next challenge would not be as simple as the last. But what confused them the most was the change in the space. The second door they passed through was unlike anything they had seen before. A vast, dark room unfolded before them, with no windows, only cold concrete walls. A large round table stood in the center, surrounded by simple chairs, as if a secret meeting was about to take place. This is the second test, Rachel said, her voice almost choking as she stared at the round table. But what kind of test is this? Why is it in such a different space? Facing the truth. On the large screen above them, new words appeared. In this game, you will face the truth. Each of you must reveal the greatest secret you have kept hidden your entire life. The truth will determine whether you can continue on this journey or not. A heavy silence enveloped the room. Each person in the group felt the tension in the air. This was not a physical challenge, but a mental one. They would have to open their hearts and confront the things they had tried to forget. Secrets from the past, actions they had deceived themselves and others about. No one in the group spoke, but all of them knew that they would have to face this. Rachel. Rachel was the first to sit down in the chair opposite the table. No one said anything. They just looked at her. She took a deep breath, trying to regain her composure before speaking. What I've hidden isn't something as big as you all might think, but it's something I can never forgive myself for. She paused, her eyes looking down at the floor, her hands clenched tightly. I betrayed the trust of a friend, someone I once cared deeply about. I took away their chance at a happy life, and I've never admitted that to anyone. The room became deathly quiet. Rachel said no more, only lifting her head, her eyes filled with anguish and regret. Clara. Clara stood up, walked to the chair, and sat down. She didn't look at anyone, her gaze fixed firmly on the screen. My story might not be anything special, but it's something I can never share with anyone. Clara took a deep breath. I allowed my mother to suffer her whole life. I knew she wasn't happy, but I did nothing. I let her live through hard years because of a wrong decision I made when I was younger. Her voice caught in her throat, as if these words were the first time she had truly faced them. Everyone remained silent, not daring to speak. Only the steady breaths of each member could be heard. Ethan. Ethan turned to look at the group, his eyes seeming to seek forgiveness. My secret? He began slowly, his voice dropping in tone. Is that I drove my family away? I made unforgivable choices, hurting them, and I can't fix it. That feeling has tortured me every day. He paused, his gaze hollow, as if he were looking at a distant memory he didn't want to revisit. Rachel looked at him, her eyes filled with sympathy. Amelia. Amelia sat in silence for a long time before speaking, her voice hesitant. The thing I've kept hidden is that I can't forgive myself for not protecting the ones I loved. I witnessed loss and did nothing. I walked away when they needed me most, and now I have to live with that pain every day. She didn't dare look anyone in the eye, turning her face away, her expression one of shame, as though she didn't want anyone to see her weakness. The final choice, when everyone had shared their secrets, a new message appeared on the large screen. You have faced the truth, but only one can move forward. You must decide who will continue on this journey. Once again, the group was confronted with a difficult decision. Their eyes met, and they all understood that this was an unavoidable test. Could they do anything to avoid causing more pain? The separation begins. Silence filled the room, each person lost in their thoughts. Each of them carried worry and unhealable pain. But this time, they were not facing the game of fate. They were facing their own decisions. Each choice would have consequences they couldn't foresee. Only one question remained. Could unity triumph this time, or would each person ultimately face an inevitable separation? The room became suffocating as the group faced the life or death decision. After each person had shared their secret, a heavy silence descended like a wave, enveloping each individual's thoughts. Every member of the group had their own reasons to survive, but now they had to face a cruel truth. Only one could continue this journey. The large screen in front of them lit up again, a haunting message appearing. Only one can move forward. Choose the one who deserves it. Those words were both a blessing and a curse. Each person in the group knew that this decision wasn't just a choice, it was a reflection of their trust and friendship throughout the journey. Fear surged in each heart, but they couldn't let fear take control. Ethan stood alone, his gaze drifting over the faces of his companions. He didn't know what to do. They had been through so many challenges together, enduring so much pain. He didn't want to be the one to decide, didn't want any of them to leave. We can't do this. I can't choose any of you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. We've made it this far because of each other. I can't break that just because of a painful decision. Rachel stepped closer to Ethan, her eyes bright yet weary. What are we supposed to do? I understand how you feel, but we can't just stand here forever. There's only one way out of this game, and that's sacrifice. She turned to look at the others in the group, then back at the screen. If I have to choose, I'll choose sacrifice. But I don't want anyone to leave. I want all of us to make it out. Clara could remain silent no longer. She had heard enough. Now is the time to face the reality. We may not want to, but we have to decide. I can't live with this feeling forever. If I'm the one who has to go, I'll accept it. But I hope you all continue to fight. She closed her eyes, her heart heavy. No one said a word, but everyone could feel the harshness in Clara's words. She was ready to sacrifice herself for the others, but would they be able to do the same? Amelia stood still, saying nothing. She didn't know what to do or who to choose. Facing this challenge, she wasn't just choosing between her companions, she was facing herself. We have to fight for each other, she finally spoke. If someone has to leave, it's not because of weakness or fear, but because we want everyone to have a chance to survive. But I don't know how I can make that decision. The painful choice. The silence lingered. Each person had different emotions, and in the heavy atmosphere, no one could make a quick decision. But they knew time would not allow hesitation. The words on the screen changed again. Only one can continue. If no decision is made, everyone will pay the price. The group began to look at each other, their faces filled with worry. Could their unity help them overcome this challenge, or would they face division? The final decision. Ethan was the last to stand up. He looked at each person in the group, then turned back to the screen, determination in his eyes. We've been through so many challenges, and we have to trust each other. Don't let fear decide our fate. He closed his eyes, reached out his hand as if trying to touch the heart of each person in the group. We will move forward together. No one will have to sacrifice. Let's do what we can. The group fell silent, then slowly, they all moved towards the screen. And this time, they decided they would not leave anyone behind. The large screen in front of them flickered once more, a new message appearing, carrying with it tension and anticipation. The entire group stood still, no one daring to breathe too loudly, no one daring to move. They knew that every decision, every action in this moment would determine the outcome of the entire game. After everything they had been through, would they be able to maintain their trust in each other? Or would this be the moment when each person had to face their own fate? The message appeared on the screen. Congratulations. You have overcome every challenge so far. However, the final challenge is the only truth. One of you has been chosen. Those words hit each person like a heavy blow. They looked at each other, their eyes quiet, filled with anxiety. Though they had made a decision earlier, they now realized that this was the moment when the true reality would finally be revealed. Ethan. Ethan took a step forward, his gaze cautious yet resolute. We've been through so much, and now we can't let fear take over. Each of us has given so much. If I am the one chosen, I will step forward, but I believe we can all make it out. Ethan's words echoed through the quiet room. The others looked at him with hopeful eyes, but the truth was that they all knew one of them would have to leave the game. Clara. Clara could no longer hold back her emotions. She stepped toward Ethan, her eyes filled with tears. I don't want to lose any of you, but if someone has to go, I accept it. The most important thing is that we have all lived our lives fully. She bowed her head, tears rolling down her cheeks. Clara knew that no one wanted to leave, but sacrifice had become an unavoidable part of this journey. Rachel. Rachel stood still, her hands clenched tightly, trying to hold back the tears threatening to fall. Thank you all for standing by me. Whatever the decision is, I trust our choice. We've done everything we could, and no matter the outcome, I won't regret it. Her voice didn't crack, but the weight of her words showed the fatigue and worry that overwhelmed her. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew they had all made their decision with resolve. Amelia. Amelia stood silent, her head bowed. Whoever it is, we can't change this, but I believe in the power of unity. We can overcome anything if we stand together. Amelia's words were simple, but carried a strange power. She wasn't the strongest in the group, but her resolve was what gave the others a sense of peace. The final choice. Once everyone had spoken, the screen lit up again, this time with a different message. Congratulations! Your group has proven the spirit of unity by overcoming every challenge. The game is over, and you are all allowed to leave. However, another challenge awaits you outside. The group stood still, stunned as they looked at the screen. They had hoped for a clear ending, a simple declaration of a winner, but instead they received this message. A large door behind the group opened, and bright light from outside streamed in. They could now step out, but what would their lives be like afterward? Could they rebuild their lives after everything they had been through? Life beyond. The group stepped through the door and found themselves in a completely different world. No longer in the harsh maze, they were now standing in an expansive land where sunlight bathed the earth and a cool breeze blew through the air. But none of them spoke because they knew that life outside wouldn't be as easy as they had imagined. They had learned a valuable lesson during their time in the game. Unity, friendship, and courage were the most precious things they had. They looked at each other, no need for further words, but all understood that together they had overcome not only physical challenges, but also trials of the soul. The large door closed behind them, carrying with it a sense of unfamiliarity and irreversibility. Though they had escaped the maze, the group still felt as if they were stepping into a completely different world. Standing in the vast field, the bright sunlight illuminated every corner, yet each person's heart was weighed down by a deep sorrow. They had escaped the traps, but were they truly ready to face life outside? The rolling green hills, the crystal clear streams, and the vast open space made them feel as if they had entered a dream world. However, reality was far different. While everything seemed peaceful, they could all sense that life outside was not as simple as it appeared. Ethan stood beside the group, his gaze thoughtful, his hands clenched tightly. The days in the maze had changed him, and now nothing seemed the same. He knew that life ahead would not be easy, and the scars, whether physical or emotional, would never truly disappear. We've overcome all those challenges, but not because we're the strongest, but because we always had each other, Ethan spoke, his voice strong, yet tinged with exhaustion. No matter what happens, we have to hold on to our trust in one another, because this is the real challenge. The group listened in silence, each person realizing that their journey was far from over. They had made it through the survival game, but life outside would hold even greater surprises. Clara stood nearby, her eyes full of contemplation. Although they had escaped the maze, the feeling that what they had been through would always follow them lingered. We survived, but what we've lost can never be reclaimed, Clara said softly but with depth. She gazed toward the distance where sunlight shone on the hills. I hope that out there we will find peace, but I also know that life isn't easy, and the things we've been through will be lessons that never fade. Rachel felt a strange emotion rise within her. The freedom, the escape from the maze did not bring the joy she had expected. We've been the survivors, but the biggest question is, what will we do next? She asked, her gaze focused on the horizon. Can we start over? Can we rebuild our lives after everything that's happened? She turned back to look at the group, hoping for an answer, but there seemed to be no clear direction. They all knew that starting over wouldn't be easy. Amelia, who rarely spoke, seemed more contemplative than ever. She stepped closer to the group and spoke, her voice steady yet filled with concern. We've learned so much from each other, not just survival, but friendship, loyalty, and sacrifice. I believe that only if we maintain these values will we be able to move forward. She turned to look at the members of the group, her eyes filled with determination. We've overcome the harshest trials. Now it's time to rebuild everything. We must trust in one another and persevere. If we don't, this life outside will swallow us whole. A new journey. The group began moving forward. No one knew where they were going, but the unity in their hearts was the strength that helped them overcome every difficulty. Though there was no maze to face, each person in the group carried with them mental wounds that could never be erased. They walked through desolate roads, sometimes crossing barren lands, sometimes passing through vast fields. Every step was a confrontation with uncertainty, but they kept moving forward. Though they had no clear destination, they continued their journey, believing that only through unity and perseverance would they survive and find the peace they longed for. The sunlight streamed through the leaves, creating shimmering patches of light on the ground. The group stood in the vast open space, with no high walls or dangerous traps in sight. But in place of the familiar dangers was a new feeling, one that none of them had ever anticipated. Freedom, yet still filled with uncertainty. Ethan was the first to take a step. His stride was steady, but his heart was heavy with worry. He looked back at the group, a tired smile on his lips, yet his eyes betrayed the exhaustion he felt. We've made it out, but is life really going to be as easy as we thought? He wondered aloud, then turned his gaze toward the horizon. The road ahead stretched on endlessly, with no clear destination. No more maze, no more challenges, but everything still felt unclear. Clara stood alone, her gaze sweeping over the distant hills, as if searching for something she couldn't see. We found freedom, but is freedom really what we wanted? She murmured. She thought about everything they had been through, the challenges, the sacrifices. In the end, what she wanted most was to find peace. But could that still be possible? We can't go back, Clara said to herself, but we can take control of our lives from now on. Rachel, though still not fully free of the fatigue weighing on her, knew she couldn't stop. She realized that even though they had escaped the maze, the world outside still held new challenges. She clenched her hands, looked ahead, and spoke. Everyone, we can't stop now. Whatever lies out there, we have to face it together. But this time, we're not fighting for survival, Rachel continued, her voice growing somber. We're fighting for ourselves, for our rebirth. Amelia walked alongside Rachel, her hand tightly gripping hers. I know we've overcome so many challenges, but surviving the game doesn't mean we can survive easily in this life. What matters now is that we find a way to heal and start over. She said nothing more, but a strong determination filled her heart. They had endured the harshest trials in the survival game, and now they faced their greatest challenge yet: real life. Another morning, a new beginning. On the second day outside the maze, the group came across a small village. The people here lived simple, self-sufficient lives and were unaware of the game the group had just endured. However, when the villagers saw the strangers, they greeted them with curious and cautious eyes. Though none of them spoke of their past, the group began to adjust to their new life. They started working in the village, tending to fields, raising livestock, and helping the villagers with various tasks. Each day, they slowly began to forget the haunting memories of the survival game, replacing them with the simple tasks that helped them rebuild their lives. Ethan and Clara worked together to build a small house in the village where they could live and work. On quiet nights, they sat side by side watching the flickering fire and sharing dreams they never had the chance to pursue. They were no longer victors in a brutal game, but were simply two people trying to rebuild their lives. Rachel and Amelia helped the villagers improve their farms, sharing survival skills they had learned during the game. Gradually, their group became an indispensable part of the village. The lesson of life. The group realized that life wasn't just about survival. It was about learning to adapt and live in harmony with one another, with nature, and with the community. They learned that surviving in a harsh environment was just the beginning, and the real journey was about seeking true peace and happiness, which would take time and effort. Life in the small village gradually settled into a peaceful rhythm. The group began to feel a sense of tranquility and harmony that they had never known during their long confinement in the maze. However, in the quiet of each night, there were still unanswered questions and wounds that had yet to heal. One morning, while the group was working in the fields, a stranger appeared from the forest. He was dressed in tattered clothes, carrying an old cloth bag, his steps unsteady. His long, dirty hair partly obscured his face, but his eyes shone brightly, as though carrying an important message. Upon seeing the stranger, the group immediately became wary, but Ethan was the first to approach. "Where are you from?" Ethan asked, his voice low yet resolute. The stranger paused, glanced around cautiously, and then spoke. "I know you. I know you participated in the survival game." The group was stunned, not understanding how this person knew about their past. "How do you know us?" Clara asked, her gaze sharp, but filled with suspicion. The stranger bowed his head and slowly said, "I was one of the game's supervisors, but I am not your enemy." A deep silence fell over them, as if the world had stopped. The group couldn't believe what they had just heard. A supervisor? Was he part of the organization that had forced them into that deadly game? "We escaped from that game," Rachel spoke up, her voice tense. "We have nothing to do with you anymore." The stranger did not respond immediately. He lifted his hand to push back his hair, revealing a long scar on his forehead, a wound from the past but clearly painful. "I'm not your enemy. I was also a victim of that game. But you don't understand what really happened." Amelia, who had always been resilient, stepped forward. "What do you want from us?" she asked, her voice calm but her eyes full of deep mistrust. The stranger took a deep breath and replied slowly, "The game isn't over. You are just pawns in a bigger game. What you've been through is only part of a global plan that you never knew about." The threat behind the curtain. After the stranger's words, the group couldn't help but think about everything that had happened. Since they had stepped out of the maze, they had believed they were free from danger, but now the truth hit them like a slap in the face. Was the survival game just a piece of a much larger conspiracy? Ethan and Clara, with their accumulated experience, quickly realized that this wasn't the first time they had heard such words. They had felt the presence of being watched, unexplained traces throughout their time trapped. It seemed that someone had always been pulling the strings behind the scenes, controlling everything from the shadows. "So what is the purpose of this game?" Ethan asked, his voice firm, no longer filled with uncertainty. "What do you want from us?" The stranger looked down at the ground for a moment before speaking again, his tone full of concern. "I don't know the ultimate goal of their plan, but I do know one thing. They never give up. If you think you've escaped, you're mistaken." A heavy tension enveloped the group. Unanswered questions began to linger in their minds. If this game wasn't over, were they truly free as they had thought? A new course of action. The group realized they couldn't just stand still, waiting for the truth to unfold. They had to act and uncover what was really going on. So Ethan, Clara, Rachel, and Amelia, along with the stranger, began to make plans to search for information about the organization behind the game, as well as those who were still trapped inside it. They decided to split into two smaller groups to gather intelligence. One group would head to major cities to search for traces of the organization, while the other would investigate remote areas where the game's supervisors might be hiding. Before they parted ways, the stranger warned them, "Be careful. Everything around you might not be what it seems." After the stranger's revelations, the group no longer doubted the hidden truth behind the survival game they had participated in. They had thought they had escaped everything, but now they were forced to face a world not only of survival, but also the ruthless manipulation of an invisible organization. Every step they took now had to be careful, for no one knew where the true enemy was hiding. Ethan, Clara, Rachel, and Amelia, along with the stranger, began to split into two groups. One group would head to the nearest large city to search for clues about the organization, while the other would head to more remote areas, hoping to find traces of the missing supervisors. Ethan and Clara decided to head to the city. Before leaving, they reminded the others, especially Rachel and Amelia, to stay cautious. "Be careful. No one knows what they might do next," Clara said, her eyes filled with concern. As the group separated, Ethan and Clara felt an intense tension. They knew this mission was not going to be easy. Every step they took would bring them closer to the truth, but it could also pull them deeper into a larger conspiracy they had yet to fully comprehend. In a remote area, Rachel and Amelia began their journey toward the less traveled areas, where small villages and dense forests surrounded them. They hoped to find any sign of the former supervisors, or at least a clue about the organization that had orchestrated the survival game. "We'll go to the end of this road," Rachel said, gripping Amelia's hand tightly. "We can't give up. Everything we've been through will be meaningless if we don't uncover the truth." Amelia nodded. "I agree, but we must stay alert. Any one of us could be the next target." The two women continued their journey, their determination rising. Though danger could lurk around every corner, they could not turn back. The truth needed to be uncovered, and they were the only ones who could do it. In the city, Ethan and Clara arrived at the large city, where they began searching for information at secret locations the stranger had pointed out. Encounters with old acquaintances from before the game began yielded no clear results. The city was vast, filled with complex relationships and hidden connections. On the third day, during a rainy evening, they met a man at a quiet tavern. This man appeared to be a lawbreaker, but he seemed to know a great deal about the organization behind the survival game. "What are you looking for?" he asked, taking a sip of his drink, his eyes betraying a cautiousness. Ethan looked directly into the man's eyes, his face emotionless. "We just want to know the truth. What is really going on?" The man lowered his voice and said, "The survival game is just part of a larger plan. You are mere pawns in the game of faceless people. If you truly want to understand, you will have to pay a heavy price." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. "What's that price?" she asked, trying to keep her composure. The man glanced around, then pulled them in closer. "They know you are searching, and they don't want you to uncover the truth. Be careful, because they never forgive anyone who dares to ask questions." A tense situation. When they returned to their lodging, Clara and Ethan sensed an unsettling presence, as though they were being watched. Every step they took in the city seemed to be under scrutiny, each movement potentially leading to danger. Both knew that no matter how hard they tried, the truth would not come easily. That evening, as they were preparing their next move, a knock at the door echoed. Clara and Ethan exchanged a look of worry, but decided to open the door. Standing behind it was another man, his face obscured, but his eyes clearly conveyed a message. "You are not safe here." The atmosphere in Ethan and Clara's room grew heavier after the warning from the strange man. Neither of them could be certain whether this person was an ally or an enemy. But one thing was clear. If they didn't act now, they would never have a chance to uncover the truth. Every passing minute seemed to pull them farther from their original goal. Ethan sat silently for a moment, spinning the empty cup on the table. Clara stood up and walked over to the window, gazing outside. The world beyond seemed calm, but in her heart, the storm was drawing nearer. She turned back to Ethan, her eyes no longer filled with the hope they once had. If we do nothing, we will never know the truth. Ethan nodded, but he felt that something was wrong. We need to leave here immediately. They're watching us. We can't stay here any longer. Meanwhile, Rachel and Amelia were on their way to a small village where the supervisors might have hidden before being exposed. However, their journey was not easy. Every time they thought they were getting closer to their goal, they encountered false leads and roads that led to dead ends. Yet their perseverance never wavered. A surprising encounter. That night, as Ethan and Clara decided to set out in search of answers, they received a phone call from an unknown number. If you want to know the truth, come to the caravan on the outskirts of the city at midnight. The brief and cryptic message made both of them feel anxious yet curious. When they arrived at the meeting spot, they saw no one, but a black car was parked in a shadowy corner, its windows covered. They couldn't pass up this opportunity. Ethan and Clara approached the car, and the door opened. A middle-aged man stepped out, calm but very cautious. "You're a little late," the man said, his voice warm yet calculating. "I knew you would come. You want to uncover the truth, don't you?" Clara didn't hesitate. "Why us? Why couldn't you be clear from the start?" The man smiled, but the smile couldn't hide the coldness in his eyes. "Because you are the only ones who can confront this organization. You survived the game, and now you must pay the price for that survival." "Pay the price? We've already lost so much. Why should we pay any more?" Ethan asked, his voice tight with tension. The man studied them carefully. "The truth is never easy to accept, but if you want the answers, you will have to pay a very high price. The price of the truth." Soon after, they were led to a secluded area deep in the city, where abandoned and decaying houses painted a grim picture. Everything here seemed deserted, but it was impossible to deny that there was a hidden life somewhere in the shadows. As they entered an old house, the man turned to look at them, his eyes full of determination. "This is where we research and gather information on the organization, but you need to understand that once you step inside, there's no going back." Clara and Ethan exchanged a glance, knowing that they had no other choice. They had stepped into this whirlwind, and now there was only one path left: to move forward. An inevitable confrontation. After a long period of collecting documents and evidence, the group gradually realized that this organization was not only connected to the survival game, but had a larger plan: to control every aspect of society, from the poorest to the most powerful. Their goal was to dominate the world by manipulating people, pushing them into desperate situations that only the organization could rescue them from. What they discovered left them even more confused. Could they stand up to the invisible power of this organization? And could they endure the inevitable confrontation ahead? As the group discussed their findings, there was a knock at the door. But this time, it wasn't a friend or an ally. It was a group of people dressed in black, carrying guns. The door was slammed open, and in an instant, everything shattered. The scene in the old house had yet to calm down. In just a few short seconds, the air had thickened with fear and tension. Before Ethan and Clara's group could even grasp the situation, the door was suddenly shattered, and a group of people dressed in black stormed in. Everything happened too quickly, too unexpectedly. They had no time to react. "Silence and follow us," one of the attackers said, his voice cold and authoritative. Clara glanced at Ethan, her eyes filled with worry, not just because of the sudden attack, but also because of what might happen next. But Ethan showed no signs of panic. He squeezed Clara's hand and whispered, "We have no choice. Follow them. Don't let them see our fear." As the group in black pulled them from the room and began to lead the way, Ethan and Clara's footsteps felt heavy, a sense of helplessness rising in their hearts. All hope of finding the truth on their own now seemed to be taken away, but they understood that this was not the time to give up. They still had to keep fighting. A dark world. They were led into an underground area where the only light came from dim lamps. The cramped, suffocating space made both of them feel as though they were trapped in a sealed box. They couldn't see the faces of their captors clearly, but they could feel the threat and authority that emanated from every movement. "This is where you will meet the person behind everything," the leader of the group said in a flat, cold tone. "Prepare yourselves, because the questions you've been asking will be answered, but the price to be paid will not be light." Elsewhere, at the same time, Rachel and Amelia arrived at a small village, an important stop in their journey to search for clues. They were looking for traces of the missing supervisors, but as they approached the house they believed might hold vital information, they discovered something horrifying. The house had been abandoned, and in a dark room, remnants of a previous confrontation remained. Fragments of broken phones, steel wires, and bloodstains showed that a bloody battle had taken place here. The supervisors now appeared to have mysteriously vanished. "We can't let this scare us," Rachel whispered, her eyes filled with resolve. "They won't spare us, but we won't give up either." Amelia looked around, sensing the eerie silence of the village. "We need to find more clues. They could be close." A decisive confrontation. When Ethan and Clara entered the room they were led to, a man was waiting for them. This was the person they had been waiting for, the one behind all the survival games. It wasn't a stranger. It was Jonas, who had once been a supervisor in the survival game. "You've done well," Jonas said, his eyes filled with self-satisfaction. "But now you will pay the price for your curiosity." "What is happening? Why this survival game?" Clara shouted, her eyes full of anger. Jonas looked at her, expressionless. "You're just pawns in a bigger game. We create these games to test the limits of humans, to see how far they can be pushed before they break. And now, you know too much." "No, we are not your pawn," Ethan yelled, his fists clenched. Jonas merely smiled. "That's right. You're not pawns. You're part of a bigger plan, a plan that even you don't fully understand." A precarious situation. Suddenly the room lit up with blinding light, and the doors around them slammed shut. A voice rang out through the loudspeakers. "The time has come. You must choose. One person must sacrifice themselves for everyone else to survive." Everything erupted into chaos. Ethan and Clara couldn't believe their ears. They had to choose between sacrificing one person to save the others, a choice they had never even considered. But at the most critical moment, a miracle occurred. Rachel and Amelia arrived just in time, breaking through the organization's defenses and rescuing Ethan and Clara. The group fought together, and in the end, they found a way to destroy the organization behind the survival game. The truth was revealed, and the organization was finally brought down. When everything was over, our characters realized that survival was not just about victory. It was a lesson in resilience, love, and sacrifice. In the end, they not only defeated the enemy, but also regained their humanity in this dark world.